thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. Thank you. A special thanks to our guest speaker, Diaa Behary. It's a pleasure to have you around today. We are so grateful. Um,
Thanks a lot, Joshua, for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be invited here, and hope that this session is going to be useful to everyone.
All right, thank you so much. So, Diary is an international speaker at conferences. Is a renowned expert in energy engineering, SDGs, and entrepreneurship with a strong passion for clean energy resources. He has been part of several international forums that discusses around these subjects. And so it's my pleasure to bring on board tonight Diaa Behary as he takes us on a journey to understanding energy needs and climate change, the need for a redress. So thank you. You have the floor, sir.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. Thanks a lot, Joshua, and all the attendants. Let me share my screen. 1 second. Do you see it?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. So let's go directly to the point. So let's start with the question: are we still not taking the climate change threats seriously? We see that many people or many countries still postponing the energy transition programs or the energy transition goals that they have. But in this short video that I'm going to show you, this actually is not a country or not a place in Saudi Arabia, and it is not a place in Sahara Desert. This place was in the first country to face climate change famine, which is extreme hunger. This country is Madagascar, that you can see here, located in Africa, and it's famous for the movie Madagascar, and it has, as I mentioned, much diverse ecosystem, and now it's the situation in parts of it. What happens to Madagascar is actually a real threat and real sign to all of the countries to start implementing the energy transition methods that are required to have clean and energy future. So throughout today, we will quickly pass through the energy climate nexus, try to understand it more. After that, we will go to the global energy needs, try to understand the different circumstances that are affecting and what they are. Then we will move to the sustainable energy solution and policies. And finally, we'll end with call for action. I maybe pass some points quickly because we don't have like much time, but let's see. So in short, as Joshua mentioned, I'm a young expert in the energy, SDGs, entrepreneurship, and at the same time, I am a PhD researcher and assistant professor at Peter the Great, St. Petersburg Polytechnic University in energy system and complexes, with a focus on increasing the efficiencies of thermal power plants and blue hydrogen production. At the same time, I'm a founder and chairman of two international organizations, which are the Global Energy Community and the Energy Sustainability Program that you can see here in the picture. Shortly, the Global Energy Community aims to be a decentralized platform for all the energy enthusiasts all over the world, and the Energy Sustainability Program aims to qualify young people to lead the energy transition in their communities through different programs we have. So here are the QR codes. Feel free to check the activities that are being done there. So the energy climate nexus, I believe all of us have heard about the egg chicken paradox, which come first, or what is the reason for the other? Was the egg come first, then we had the chicken, or was the chicken first, then we had an egg? If we reflect this in the energy sphere, we could, in the energy climate nexus, we can face or see something similar to this. So we need to phase out fossil fuels and to achieve climate change goals. But to do this, to have this transition, we need actually to burn more fossil fuels. So it's some kind of paradox, because, for example, all the solar panels, the wind turbines, nuclear power plants, and all these clean methods of generating energy, to be done, we need to burn fossil fuels so that we run the economy that will make them. And if we say we will depend on the renewables on the energy transition, it's actually good. But according to International Energy Agency, by 2025, we have only renewable energy capacity of about 35%. So there is about 65% of our dependence on fossil fuel, which we cannot substitute simply with the renewable energies. So throughout this webinar, we will discuss some interesting thoughts about this situation and this paradox. But before we move on, let's have a quick look about what scenarios do we have related to the energy and the climate. So there are three main scenarios when we are discussing about the energy transition. First one is the STEPS, or the stated energy policy scenarios. The second one is the APS, or announced pledges scenario. The third is the NZE, or net zero emissions by 2050. And quickly, what each one discusses or expects. Firstly, for the STEPS, it's from its name, it made its expectation based on the existing policies. So what are the countries working with now? If there is no any change happened to these policies, so the scenario will be, as we will discuss later. And for the APS, it's the announced, but not fully detailed. So, for example, one country can say, I will decrease this number of CO2 emissions by this year. So they say that, no much details, but this type of announced pledges is taken into consideration. For the net zero scenario, obviously, from its name, it's kind of pathway to achieve net zero by 2050. So some international energy agencies, such as IEE or IRENA, they say, yeah, if we need to achieve the net zero, we need to follow the following and do 1, 2, 3, 4, as we will discuss a bit later. But to achieve it, we need to do this. So in this scenario, it discusses these points. In the STEPS, there will be a slow transition and continuous reliance on fossil fuels, while in APS, there will be a decline in fossil fuel and the increase in the share of clean energy. And for the net zero, it's obviously there will be rapid transition to renewables and zero carbon technologies. Regarding the emissions in the STEPS, there will be a rise in the emissions with a slower pace. So as we will see in the graph a little bit, so since the increase is slightly or with lower pace, so it will look like it is decreasing. For the APS, there will be a peak in the emissions and decline. And for net zero, it's, yeah, from its name, it means it will reach net zero by 2050. So meaning there is a rapid decline in the emissions. So this is a graph that shows the decrease in the CO2 emissions in each scenario, as we discussed. The net zero, directly reaches zero emissions by 2050, while APS, no, it's somewhere in between, and the STEPS is the highest one due to the less dependence on renewable and continuing dependence on fossil fuels. For the climate target, if the STEPS scenario is followed, so we'll reach about 2.7 by 2100, while in APS it will be about 2.1 by 2100, and for net zero, it's known for 1.5 Celsius degree by 2100. and this is graph representing the range on the temperatures in each scenario. So after we understood these three main scenarios, because our talk will be depending on them, that's why I needed to clarify them before we start. So what is the expected global energy demand? And we need to differentiate between the demand and the supply for the demand. Here it's discussing the type of industry. So there are two types, mainly the energy intensive industries such as cement, chemicals, iron and steel and so on, while there are other industries which are less intensive in regard of energy consumption, such as software development, different medicines and so on. And so not to like pay much attention to numbers, but what you need to pay attention to the trends that are happening in each scenario. So firstly, regarding the energy demand, if you can notice that in the steps, there is much higher energy demand compared to the other scenarios, for example, APS and NZE. The energy demand in the steps is higher, and it could look strange or why it's higher, although like we are going to the same year and we are expecting to have the same industries, by why the steps has higher energy demand. We will know this a little bit later. So we can see in the steps also there is dependence on the fossil fuel, even without CCUS or anything, while in the other scenarios there is a decrease in the traditional fuels, and we can see also some new let me use the razor 1 second, some new appearance of the usage of CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage technologies, as well as clean and renewables in the different scenarios and different industries. So in the other scenarios also, if you can notice, there is a decrease in the share of fossil fuels, but at the same time there is an increase in the alternatives, for example, electricity, bioenergy, hydrogen and so on. So this compensates that, because we cannot just have decrease in the fossil fuel with no alternative or with no substitution from other sources. That's why you can see here is decreasing in the fossil fuel, while there is increase in the other types of fuels. So moving to the second point, which is the energy supply. We have also in the different scenarios by 2030 and 2050, you can see the traditional fuels, and this light blue dot is the CO2 emissions. Firstly, starting from the year 2021, we have, let's say, 600 exajoule energy supply, and there is increase in the steps scenario in the by 2030 and 2050, while there is a decrease in the other scenarios. And also this could take us back to the same question of how is this happening. Also in the steps, the demand for oil or the supply of oil almost doesn't change. It could be changed, but with very slight percentage. Similarly in coal, you can see here not much difference, but by 2050 it will be a little bit lower. But in oil, no, almost very low decrease, and also in the natural gas and so on. And in the other side, the renewables still not much increased. But if we discuss the same in the other scenarios, we can see the opposite is happening. So there is decrease in the traditional fuels and increase in the share of renewables, and simultaneously there is decrease in the CO2 emissions in each scenario. So since we discussed this type of energy supply and energy consumption, we need to now move to the global energy needs. And this section is actually interesting because it could be a little bit confusing. So, for example, if someone asks you which country has the highest greenhouse gas emissions, first answer will be China, because yeah, we all know that China is the biggest emitter, followed by India, USA, and here, as you can see in this colored bar below, the more it becomes dark, meaning that the more it's greenhouse gas emission country. And here China comes in the top, which you all know, followed by India, USA, and some other countries such as Brazil, KSA, Russia comes after them. But if we discuss the same question from another point of view, which is the greenhouse gas emissions per capita, will it be the same? The answer is no. If we are discussing greenhouse gas emissions for the same country, but per capita, not per country as a whole, we'll find it's completely different numbers and different graph. We can see that Canada comes in the first, and KSA, also Australia and Mongolia, which is strange because in the previous graph we had other countries, but when we are discussing per capita or per person, we can see different numbers. And it looks strange, and because also we know that the country which is more has high demand for energy, it means that it emits a lot. For example, in the case of China and India, because they have many manufacturers, many industries, that's why they emit a lot. And we discussed it also per capita, it looks strange. But to look more strange, if we are discussing the energy consumption per capita, not the greenhouse gas emissions, but the energy consumption, it will be like another type of information. So, for example, here's the top energy consuming per capita: Emirates, Norway, Qatar, Canada, completely third countries than those we discussed previously, which is strange. Because, yeah, if we are having a look for the energy consumption, the greenhouse gas emission per country, we have some statistics. If we are discussing the greenhouse gases per capita, we have another statistics. If we are discussing the energy consumption, which are supposed to be in a relationship with the energy consumption, we have another statistics. So how all of this happen, or how all of this is connected? This is connecting by the energy consumption reasons, or what drives energy consumptions. And there are different reasons that can drive the energy consumptions. I just picked some of them as a summary. First one is a population. So when we discuss, for example, the biggest emitters, China, could be because of the population, because they have high population. So it means that they emit a lot. But at the same time, when we distribute this amount of population, this amount of greenhouse gas emissions on the population, this statics we have will decrease. So if we discuss another example, for example, a country with low population, let's say Qatar, so they have high emission because they are have oil and gas works, which are extensive emitter industry. So when they distribute this amount of greenhouse gas emission on the population, which is low, or like low, very low compared to China, so they will appear that per capita they are emitting a lot. Another thing is the high income and purchasing power. So the ability of people to purchase, or the higher income means people consume a lot. And if people consume a lot, means much energy is needed to make more products, and so on. The implementation of energy efficiency and saving measures also contribute, as we'll discuss a bit later. Energy intensive industries, if the country has much energy intensive industries, meaning that they will be generating much greenhouse gases, and they will need much energy. Also transportation, what type of transportation each country has, and buildings, heating and cooling. So for example, if you are talking about country like Saudi Arabia or Gulf region, in summer it's extremely hot, meaning that they consume huge amount of air conditioning, meaning they need much energy. And in contrary, cold countries such as Russia or Europe, they have the opposite situation. In winter, it's extremely cold, so they need to burn much fuel to get the warmth. So if we have a look on this type of, in these points in a little bit detail, so we can see by 2100, we will have about like more than 10 billion people. And this could be a good thing and bad thing at the same time, because this 10 billion is actually is lower than expected. So less people means economies are affected, because economies usually need many people to work, to pay taxes, to support the different economy and people living there. But if a country has less people, it means there is a problem here. And this is like the good thing. The bad thing is that as people increase, it means pollution is increasing. Also, if there is no like measures are taking to prevent this pollution. For the high income and purchasing power, it's like some of us can think that there is high purchasing power in global north countries, but by 2030, according to some studies by Statistica, there will be different changes. For example, China, the purchasing power will increase tremendously, followed by India, then USA, and even the amount of increase in each of these countries are different. Meaning that these countries will be more developed in their economies, and people will have higher living conditions. And for example, also if we talk about some African countries, we can see here Egypt, there will be increase in its purchasing power, and actually it will be more than Germany. So world is changing, and get ready for it. Let's move to the other points. So yeah, let's discuss all this the left 4 points in one graph here that you can see. So main point is that we have total final consumption, which is this gray bar, and we have some like statistics or numbers based on the sector or industry. For example, the industry itself, the buildings, transportation, and other usages. And we have the lever. This lever means the technology that are going to be implemented, for example, energy efficiency or electrification, or maybe some other of clean fuels, shifting to other type of fuels. So in the activity here, you can see that in 2021, in the steps scenario, we are supposed to have a high increase reaching about 525 exajoule. This is the expected energy consumption by 2030. But in the reality, or how it will be, is less than that. So it will be somewhere below 500 exajoule. And this decrease is due to the implementation of the lever here. For example, you can see, because in the step scenario, they applied energy efficiency techniques, they applied some kind of electrification and fuel shifts. There is a decrease in energy needs. It meaning that no, the economic was not affected, but the amount of energy needed to get the same result is decreased. This is thanks to, for example, energy efficiency or electrification, or getting this needed energy from other sources, not not so much consuming. For example, there is something called energy density. So you can take from nuclear, for example, much energy compared to, let's say, 10 oil barrels. If we are discussing about the APS, we can see also, yes, there will be a high demand in the energy consumption, or there will be high level of energy consumptions, but the decrease in this consumption will be much higher compared to steps, because in this scenario, as we discussed in the early beginning, the countries are aiming to decrease, to implement different types of transition strategies. For example, they will depend more in clean energy, more in energy efficiency techniques and electrification. And in this second bar, in both of them, it shows how much will be decreased in each sector. So let's move to another interesting question, which is, will applying the energy efficiency solution solve the problem? We discussed, yeah, energy efficiency theoretically will decrease the consumption and so on, but is this actually the situation? So imagine with me, you went to a supermarket and you usually buy one product with a specific amount of money, but in this day that you went to supermarket, you find that there is a sale on this product. So what usually people do, efficiency, so he can, with the same amount of money, or even if he will pay a little bit more, but he will get more of this product. So in this situation, you increase your consumption and increased your payment to have this product. So you did nothing actually, or even the situation became worse, because, yeah, let's say you usually buy a bottle of milk for, let's say, $1. So you found some sales that it became 80 cents. So you bought 2 or 3 or more. So you paid more than you were supposed to pay. So you didn't benefit from this decrease, but in the contrary, you paid more. And this, if we are reflecting it on the energy, we can face some kind of paradox called Jevons paradox, and it is mentioned by an English scientist called William Jevons, English economist, and he says, in his words, when the cost of using a resource decreases due to increased efficiency, it becomes more attractive for consumers and industries to utilize it. Consequently, this increased affordability leads to higher consumption and can potentially offset the initial gains in efficiency. Simple example for this, if you are talking about energy, is the LED lamps. So yeah, if people are using the traditional lamps, it consumes much energy. It makes you pay much electricity bill. But if you are using this LED lamp, meaning that it consumes less energy, and at the same time meaning that you pay less. So what many people do is that they can leave it working all the day, even if they don't need it, just because they say it doesn't consume much energy, so I can use it because, yeah, it's environmental friendly. So actually he did nothing. So instead of using it with the same behavior to save energy, he kept using it because he thinks that it's energy efficiency, and he lost the gains of the idea of having this lamp. Another example, if we are applying it to cars, if implementing this example to cars, so let's say the cost of driving 25 miles is $4 in the regular car. And when people made some studies, they found that, yeah, per week for this regular car, people usually drive 25 miles per week. But when they introduced to them another type of car, which is hybrid car that uses electric engine and internal combustion engine at the same time, the cost of driving 25 miles is $2. So they noticed that there is a change in the behavior of the drivers, that they started to drive more. So there was an increase of 150 miles more in the week compared to previous. So actually they did nothing because they didn't gain the benefit of having less price. They even increased it, so it became worse. There will be a real benefit if, yeah, they pay $2 per mile and kept the behavior in 25 miles per week. So yeah, in this situation, 100% there will be a gain and benefit of this increase in the efficiency of the car. But due to the behavior of the people and the mentality, they did nothing and actually drove more miles. So this is just a question to think about while you are discussing different energy topics or even in personal life. And let's move to the last point here in this section of how does the global energy demand look like by 2050 based on the type of fuel. So we can, like, if we're summarizing the types of fuel we have the traditional coal, oil and natural gas, and renewables. And as you can see in the different scenarios, the steps APS and NZE, there is in the coal, yeah, everyone is decreasing it. Everyone is trying to decrease the amount of coal because it's really harmful. But in the oil and natural gas, no much decrease. Yeah, there is this kind of decrease, but it's very slight if we are talking in the steps scenario. But in the APS and in the NZE, there is obvious decline in the dependence on oil, natural gas, and coal. For regarding the renewables, here we can see there is increase in obviously in the NZE and APS due to the policies and roadmaps that were driven. And in the steps, there is a slightly increase in the dependence on renewables and nuclear. And as a short information about the numbers of the decrease or decline in these types of fuel, by 2030, there will be an average annual growth of the global energy demand by 0.7 percentages, while by 2050 it will reach about 16% growth. Like from this 0.7, there will be 16% growth in the emerging economies, and in the advanced economies is about 9%. And I think now we understand why this, for example, in advanced economies there is a decrease. As we mentioned, there are some types of lever that decreases the demand for energy and its consumption. In the APS, there will be a decline in the global energy demand by 0.1 percentages, and in the NZE, there will be about 1.2 decline per year in the global energy demand. But what we can notice that in all the different scenarios, NZE, steps, APS, there will be still demand for fossil fuel, and this can be contradicting what we hear of, that we need to get rid of fossil fuel and we need to remove them and depend completely on renewables. But how is this possible if we are saying this, and at the same time, even if the NZE, there is demand for natural gas, for oil, and for coal? This is what we are going to discuss in the next section, which is the sustainable energy solutions and policies. So why we will continue our dependence on fossil fuel? This is actually a good question. And to answer it, let's firstly bring a quote by Sheikh Ahmed Zahi Yamani, the minister of Saudi oil and founder of OPEC, when he said, "The Stone Age came to an end, not for lack of stones, and the oil age will end, but not for the lack of oil." So oil and all the traditional fossil fuel are still there, they will continue. And when we say that we will shift from them, not because they will end, as we can see or as we can hear some numbers that they will end by after 50 years and so on. This is not true, completely true. So why we will continue using them? Firstly, because available reserves and financial visibility. We have a lot of them, and they are economically feasible. Why shall we stop using them? Country as Russia, countries as in the Middle East, country as Norway, they have huge amount of these, and it's super cheap for them to extract. Why shall they stop using them? Another thing is the historical dependence. We have been using the traditional fuels since the early beginning of the Industrial Revolution till now. So just to completely shift or to once shift from them to renewables, this will not work. Another thing is the economic dependence. Almost everything is running on fossil fuels, not only for like high energy or high intensive industries, but also in the simple chemical industries, they depend on fossil fuels. For those three main reasons, we can say that we will still continue dependence on fossil fuel. But if we kept using, the problem is that it's similar as the knife. Knife could be good or could be bad, depends on how we are going to use them. So fossil fuels for themselves is not a bad thing. It's how we use them or how we will continue using them. This is the issue. Nowadays, for example, there are different methods that we can use them in a more clean way that we will discuss a little bit later. So the first point, as we discussed, the ability of reserves and financial visibility, coal will stay, the numbers say that they will stay for 150 years, uranium 90 years, natural gas 50 years, oil 50 years. Is this numbers true or not? No, this numbers is not correct. Firstly, because it depends on the report that made it and how the report or the organization made it. This is first thing. Second thing, these numbers based on the study of the found research. So they made some kind of excavations or made study for a region, and they knew that here this amount of coal, here this amount of oil, and so on. But there are many other regions that they have never discovered or made some researches there. So it means these numbers only for the areas they found or made studies. So these numbers are based on them. But what are the hidden reserves? Still no one knows, which can increase these numbers a lot more in the future. Historical dependency, yeah, as we mentioned, we are still depending on them since long time ago, and we'll keep depending on them. I'm just moving a bit quickly because you need to leave my place soon. Here are some examples of the economic dependency as we discussed. So car battery cases, which are used for like electric cars, fertilizers, dyes, detergents, laptops, lubricants, telephones, solar panels, shampoos, wind turbines, trucks. All these just examples I picked to show you that fossil fuels are deeply included in different type of economical activities, not just for burning them. So that's why by 2050 or by 2030, we will keep using them, even if we completely turn to green energy. Fossil fuel will be still playing part in our economies, unless we find different alternatives for these industries. It's not moving, 1 second. Okay. So we discussed the issue and we saw how that they are continuing with us. And as I mentioned, the problem is not about having them or consuming them, but the point is how we can use them in a proper way, or in other points, how we can decrease the CO2 emissions. And here the talk will be a little bit more general So it will include some solutions for the fossil fuel, but also in general how we can decrease the CO2 emissions. So there are 6 main pillars, if we can say, that can help us to decrease the CO2 emissions. Firstly, using new technologies such as CCUS, carbon capture, utilization and storage. There's one method, other methods such as air capture units can also be used. Another point is the energy conservation and efficiency. The third one is electrification in the end user sector. We will discuss every one in a little bit more details, but it is a summary of these points. Moving to renewable energies, using the usage of hydrogen and its derivatives, and BECCUS, bioenergy, with the usage of carbon capture technologies and other carbon removal measures. What is the share of the energy transition components in the 1.5 Celsius degree scenario? In these points that we discussed, what is the share of each of them if you would like to reach the 1.5 Celsius degree by 2050? This is the shares according to IRENA. So for the renewables, we need at least to have 25% from renewables for power and direct uses. For energy conservation and efficiency, we need to have about 25% like inclusion of them. For electrification in the end use sectors, should reach about 20%, hydrogen and derivatives 10%, CCUS 6%, and BECCUS is 14%. For energy efficiency, this can decrease the demand as we discussed, and some of them also could be for the energy conservation. Could be the including of circular economy, for example, for reusing and preventing the usage of more, decreasing the need for energy in general. Also, electrification can happen in the transportation sector, as well as in the like heating systems that we have. If we can use clean electricity, could also decrease the need and help in the energy transition. Yes, so let's move to the policies. We discussed some of the technologies, we understood how the technologies could look like to decrease the CO2 emission. What about policies? We can say we have about 4 main policies to decrease. First one is policies for structural change and just transition. And some example is the trade policies or agreements. So if we are going to make some kind of electricity transportation that was generated by renewables, how this could be some example of agreements. Environmental and climate policies, labor market policies and social protection. This could be for program training or retraining. So if we say we are going to close coal mine and move these workers to clean or renewable energy sphere, those people, if we just close the mine without social protection for them, they will be angry about that, and it will affect their homes and will affect their families. So that's why policies for this also could be included. Another type of policies is for supporting the integration of renewables into the energy system. So how to enhance the system flexibility to include the renewable energy system. So we have, for example, solar panels, we have wind farm, we have hydrogen, how this all can be included in the system to provide some kind of flexibility to organize their work also needs to be discussed. Policies for integration on renewable on-grid systems with the main grid. This is the part of solar and wind, how to be included in the system. Here is the meaning of this example. Policies directly supporting renewable energy deployment. This could be pricing techniques, feed-in tariffs. For example, if I'm like a renewable energy company, but people are not so motivated to use it, or I don't know what project I will have in the future. So there could be some kind of hesitation in continuing in this business. But the country, as a kind of pathway to achieve energy transition, they need to make some incentives for these companies, so they can make with them long-term contracts or some higher pricing tariffs for them, which could be discussed in this type of policies. The fourth and last type of policies is the enabling policies to enable the energy transition, and this could be, for example, to level the playing field, for example, fossil fuel reforms. This means that if we are discussing the relation or the market of electricity from renewables and fossil fuel, it will be like unfair playing, because fossil fuel is much cheaper than renewables. So in these policies, we need to have some fair playing. This could be, for example, of adding some incentives to the renewables to make them price competitive, or on the other hand, increase the prices of fossil fuel. Or this could be, for example, in kind of carbon taxes for companies that are generating generating CO2 emissions. So there could be some carbon taxes or carbon prices for them, and this money can be used as incentives for renewable energy. That's how we can decrease and enable them to compete in the market. Next slide is some kind of emerging innovations for the integration of variable renewable energy sources. So yes, we discussed we need to implement more renewables, but what are some of the emerging innovations? These innovations are enabling the technology, market design, business models, and system operation, as we will see right now. Yeah, this graph summarizes them. So if we are discussing system operation, we can see there are three main points. Firstly, electrification of end user. And here, meaning that from this point that the end user, if they are depending more in electricity for their heating, for their other purposes, it's much better. So this could be designing the system of them. Also, operation of decentralized system. So there are some ideas of or some system called microgrid systems, the systems that are not usually connected with the main grid, but they are separated by their own. So they are not connected to the main grid, but in small communities, there could be its own energy generation power plants, its own energy storage, and its own grid. So that's what is meant by that. Value complementaries in renewable generation, meaning that all the different types of renewables should be connected by somehow, so they compete each other or they are integrated with each other. So the system could be designed so we use solar during the morning, and during the evening we can shift to wind, for example, or hydro. So this can happen automatically, but it needs a system that coordinates between all the different types of renewables we have. Regarding enabling technologies, meaning that introducing more technologies to the market, such as digitalization in the market, using smart meters, smart grids, usage of hydrogen, blockchain in making the contracts or deals, as an example, energy storage, such as batteries, hydropowers, and different new types of batteries, like solid batteries and so on. Also, electric vehicles, more inclusion for them could be discussed in enabling technologies. As a business model here, not only the government shall be the one that is making controlling the energy business, but we could have some type of different business models in this. One of them is the energy as a service, and here the energy is provided as a service rather than a product, meaning that okay, if I will provide you with a solar panel, so I don't just give you the solar panel and leave, but no, I include some kind of maintenance, some kind of management of your system inside your house, some optimization services. So energy is dealt not just as a product, but as a service that it contains, yeah, the energy source, some other services as we discussed. For the aggregators, here the business will act as a group together, like multiple scale energy producers and consumers participate in the market. So the relation between the producers and consumers is not just I sell to you electricity or I sell to you energy, but no, there will be kind of relation of how we as a producer and consumer decrease it. So maybe I will update you with my energy consumptions. I will share with you some of the difficulties that I have. So in this kind of aggregator is that there is kind of relation between the consumer and the energy producer. The last point here for the peer-to-peer electricity trading, here there is a concept called prosumer, meaning that it consists of two parts. Firstly, producer, secondly, consumer, and together the word is prosumer, meaning that I have my own house, for example, and I have some solar panels or small wind turbines on the top of it. So I consume energy and store them on my battery. And when there is a need for my, let's say, my neighbor, and I have extra energy, so I can directly sell to him without any inclusion of government or third party. So this is what is meant by peer-to-peer electricity trading. The last point is the market design. So first one is encouraging the flexibility, means that we implement some strategies to make the energy system more adaptable to the supply and demand. So we can, in this situation, we can, for example, shift between the different types of renewables or nuclear or the batteries that we can have in our system. So we encourage this type of flexibility. Empowering the consumer, yeah, here, as I mentioned, we can give the consumer more control and participation in the energy market, because if we made them more informed with the choices about the energy uses, the possibility of technology and policies, so we included them. For example, yeah, we would like to apply this method or this technology. This could be beneficial for you for these reasons, and explain this to him. Not just we will make cutoffs or blockouts for electricity just like this, so people will get confused. But when we include them and try to explain everything to them, why this happened, how it's going to affect, what you could do, so by this we are also empowering the consumers. Last point is value of special complementarities, and here it depends on when we are designing the market. So we don't, for example, put wind turbines or wind farms hundreds of kilometers away from the area that we would like them to supply them with electricity. No, here we need to have some kind of resources saving and kind of geographic distribution of the energy supplying unit and the beneficial customer from it. So this was here the last point, and I will end with the call for action, what each one can do to play an active role in the energy transition. First thing is to adopt to renewable energy if possible. So if there is a possibility of installing like small solar panels on your house or in your balcony, it could be options that you are contributing and playing a role in energy transition. Also reducing the energy consumption. As I mentioned, we can have just by implementing some technologies, we will achieve them by like reducing the energy consumption of our own. So instead of using extra energy or leaving our lights open, we can decrease all of this by thinking wisely. Another thing, another point is educate and influence the other. So you always shall be seeking to learn more and contribute in, if my specialty is energy, to make researches and distribute the information about this type of researches, this type of trends that are happening. Not finally, the other point is support sustainable transportation. So if I can use car sharing or public transportation or electric vehicles, this also could be useful, and you can play a role in this. For circular economy, yeah, reuse, reduce, recycle also help. Support energy projects and communities. Yeah, you can join, for example, the different types of communities on LinkedIn or some clubs maybe you have in your university. This also can play an important role in your contribution. Finally, stay informed with the trends about the renewable energies and what is happening in the energy transition, so that you can able to contribute wisely and actively in that sphere and in this topic. So thank you all for your listening, and I hope it was useful, and feel free to contact me one more time, the QR codes for GEC and ESP. Thank you. Joshua, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much, sir. We are so grateful for this. As we wrap up today's webinar, I want to extend our sincere gratitude to Mr. Diaa Behary for his insightful presentation on the pressing issue of energy needs and climate change. Mr. Behary, your expertise and dedication to sustainability have truly inspired us tonight. Thanks once again, Mr. Behary, for sharing your knowledge with us today. And also a big thanks to you, all our participants, for joining us tonight. I just want to encourage us that we apply what we have learned to create a more sustainable future, not just for ourselves, but for our future generations. We wouldn't have time to take questions tonight. We wouldn't have time to entertain questions tonight. I don't know. Or maybe I should give opportunity to one person or two that may want to ask their question live. And if there is none, I would love to. I think most of us on a WhatsApp community group, we're going to be sending a survey form for a feedback form that you can fill, and you can input all your questions and need for clarification in that form, which appropriately be communicated to Diaa Behary. And I would also love to say that thank you, Behary. I was part of a program is organization organized earlier this year. That's Energy Sustainability Program. I'm a proud graduate of Energy Sustainability Program, and I can assure you our community that by the time the opportunity for that comes up again, I'm going to let you all know about it. So we need to go now, and I don't know if anybody is able to turn on their mic. Let's say thanks to our guest speaker. You can turn on your mic and say thanks to our guest speaker. If you are able to do that, please turn on your mic. Okay.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Blessing, good evening.
Yes, I want to say thank you to Diaa Behary. Thank you so much for tonight. Thank you for the presentation. More grace. Well done, sir.
Thank you, Blessing. Who else is turning on the mic to appreciate Behary on our behalf?
Thank you so much for your kind words. Thank you.
All right. So this is where we have to call it a wrap tonight. So thank you so much, Diaa Behary. We long to see you some other time on our webinar series. This is a monthly series that discusses and educates on issues that borders around energy and climate. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Joshua. It was my pleasure, and for sure I will be glad to conduct one more webinar in the future with you and with your team. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. So good night, everyone. Do have a splendid night rest. Good night. Good night.